Welcome to Sailing Sweet Ruka. I'm Kate, this is Curtis, and Roxy the dog. We left the east coast of the United States with hopes of sailing around the world via Cape Horn and the Cape of Good Hope. With Cape Horn behind us, we sailed up the fjords of Patagonia and then spent the austral summer cruising the northern fjords to enjoy all that we had passed over in the winter. We are summarizing this trip to get you caught up closer to real time, but we just had to show you what all the other YouTube channels are missing. Join us as we show you our route and highlight some of the most epic sailing, people, and views in the world. Hey everybody, back at home and around the world, it's Sweet Ruka here, and we are out in the open ocean.
Yeah, welcome back to Sailing Sweet Ruka. We are in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. We are almost to Easter Island right now as we're talking, but our goal is to get you caught up to real time and show you what we did this summer while sailing in Patagonia.
Yeah, and it actually pains me to have to give you this summary because there's so much amazing footage from all of the northern parts of Patagonia and the fjords, and they could each be their own little episode just like we did on our way up. But because we want to get caught up to real time, we're going to do a summary episode for you today.
We did a complete circumnavigation of the northern part of Patagonia, the whole section above Golfo de Penas, between Puerto Montt and Golfo de Penas. This is actually a really long way to sail. It's about 300 miles down and 300 miles back, so the whole circle was well over maybe 600 or 700 miles of sailing.
So let's go ahead and get started with our first stop after leaving Puerto Montt. Puerto Montt is the northernmost city most yachts stop at before entering the Pacific Ocean, but we left there and headed southeast to our first anchorage instead. Puerto Montt Radio, Valero, Sweet Ruka.
Estación que ha Puerto Radio, 1414.
The first place we sailed after leaving Puerto Montt was a small town called Hornopirén, and we anchored just off of an island facing the town, which was absolutely beautiful and gave us a wonderful view of the volcano.
Yeah, the name of the island was Isla Pelada, and we anchored sort of on the northwest side of it, and it was just an amazing, beautiful, protected little anchorage with this awesome view of this snow-capped mountain.
It was a really gorgeous place to spend the night. We did a little bit of filming there, but our real goal of this part of the journey is to get to a small fjord called Cahuelmo, where we really were looking forward to these hot springs and thermal spas that everyone in Chile was raving about and telling us all about. And after sailing over 1,200 miles in the winter up through the fjords, we were absolutely looking to get into our bathing suits, and we couldn't wait. The next stop on our list was the state park in the estero of Cahuelmo. The passage was beautiful, but the winds challenged us by shifting between the various islands and rushing down the tall mountains. But it was great to put our newest jib and our brand new Evolution mainsail to the test, seeing how tight we could sail upwind before arriving to one of my favorite anchorages. Yeah, as we entered into Cahuelmo, we could see that it was going to be a very, very difficult place to anchor. We hunted around in a few different spots. One we found was completely full of old fishing gear and old lines that was just completely not suitable and even dangerous to anchor in. Lucky enough, there was these very good, strong mooring balls that are there for tourist boats. And we were there out of season, which allowed us to use the mooring ball, and then we also stern tied to the shore. But we also had to be very careful here because when the winds come from the north or the northwest, they funnel directly into this fjord, and being on this mooring ball in a lee shore could be extremely dangerous.
And also what was fun when we got there is we saw our friends David and Juja, which you may have seen in the last episode. They got there a day before us and kind of checked it out, so we were able to spend a little bit of time with them before we went to shore.
The next thing we did, we were just itching to get to these thermals, so we took our dinghy, we explored the river area, found a place to pull our dinghy up in these huge big high tides, and then we walked for, I don't know, maybe, I think, what, a kilometer? maybe a mile or
Yeah,
so.
so somewhere around there. Yeah.
And then we had to pick our way through these trails up along the shore. And then finally we came to these absolutely amazing thermal hot springs.
Yeah, and after a cold winter that even the Chileans said was a tough winter in Puerto Montt, we were really looking forward to the hot water, and we jumped right in.
Well, we came back to the boat after a really amazing sunset view from the thermals. And then the next morning, we decided to take the dinghy up the river to this small dock that led us to a hiking trail to this gorgeous, gorgeous mountain lake. It was a really difficult hike. There was lots of mud, lots of climbing, but when we got there, wow.
Yeah, it was knee-deep mud. Even Roxy was having a hard time trudging through it, but it was well worth the climb, and amazing fresh water. Really, really cold, but that didn't stop us from taking a dip.
Yeah, when we got there, everything opened up to this just amazing, beautiful view of the mountains, this crystal clear blue lake, and we're able to once again take off our clothes and dive in. So after spending a little bit of time at this mountain lake, we came on back to the boat. There was a small problem though. Our dinghy at this dock, the tide has gone out of the river and our dinghy was laying on the bottom of the river. So we had to drag it down the river, and then we found there was whitewater rapids that we had to make our way through in our little dinghy. So we paddled our little hearts out, and that was pretty fun.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that it was definitely our fault for not timing it up exactly. If we would have got up a little bit earlier and headed to the lake, we probably wouldn't have to do so much of the whitewater rafting.
And the views of the mountains were just absolutely amazing. It was so cool, it was so much fun paddling with Kate and Roxy. That was just one of the most epic things I think that I've ever done. A little bit of whitewater rafting in our dinghy. Not exactly top level, but good enough for me.
The forecast permitted one more good day of wind and weather to head to the bottom of the little fjord to explore the private thermal pools of Porcelana.
So after Cahuelmo, we were still really excited to get to the next hot spring on our list, which was called Porcelana. And the local Chileans were also just absolutely raving about this place. It had different levels of pools of different temperatures coming down with an amazing river next to it. So that's what we were told, and we were just so excited to be able to get there. So we sailed further down the fjord and grabbed a mooring ball.
There was an open mooring ball, and the owner of the property was out in his little dinghy while we were there, so he came up and informed us that it was just a $20,000 peso per person to visit the hot springs that were on his land. So after getting settled and getting the mooring ball all set up, we headed to shore to check them out.
Yeah, they were absolutely magnificent. I think we spent hours and hours in these. You could sit there with just this fabulous view of the volcanoes and mountains across the fjord. It was epic.
Yeah, I think that it was just the perfect temperature. Another beautiful sunny day, looking at a snow-capped mountain in the distance. We just stayed the one night, and then it was ready to go. We were ready to go.
Yeah, it's tough. You really can't stay down in the fjords with a northwest wind can make it extremely unbearable in those areas of the fjords. The wind just absolutely funnels and howls, so we had to get the heck out of there and get back north before the next northerly wind came, which was on its way.
We decided to make a little detour on our way to the next anchorage to see the amazing waterfall in Estero Quintepu, which is just north of Cahuelmo. Curtis was feeling a little daring and thus nearly put Sweet Ruka's bow under the rushing fresh water. It was tempting to open the water tanks and fill up. But next up was Isla Pelada again, but this time it was an anchorage that was not in the navigational guidebooks. A friend of ours from Puerto Montt, Eugenio, told us about this little secret anchoring spot on Isla Pelada on the southeast end. So we made our way north out of the fjord and headed back to Isla Pelada to rest for the night.
And it ended up being a really, really cool anchorage. Some local Chilean fishermen came in with this huge catch of crab that they had it was like one of the last days of crab season. It ended up being an absolutely awesome evening. We had to come in and undo a little rope that was tied across the fjord, and then we backed our way into the fjord. And then it turned out that this rope was left there by some local Chilean fishermen. They came in and saw that we were in the fjord and were going to leave, and we said, no, don't leave. We'll help you tie up. So we all tied up in the fjord together. They gave us some centolla and a fish, and we gave them some wine and some beer, and we just had a wonderful evening with the local fishermen. They were super cool. Thanks, guys.
So I cooked the crab legs by steaming them, and then also we filleted the fish, and I made this delicious beer batter that I think was some of the best fish that we've actually had, and it's definitely a meal to remember.
Yeah, it was really cool. Kate had to crack open the centollas on the transom of the boat, and then we took the fish ashore and filleted it on a rock. Just totally epic, amazing Patagonia lifestyle. So after a wonderful time in Isla Pelada, the norther was coming, and it was time to take that and head south. We had a long way to go to get south, over 100 miles. And we don't like to sail at night in these places because there can be fishing gear and unmarked hazards, logs, whales, so we try and be safe and anchor during the night. And there's also so many really good anchorages to go to that it's easy to do. So the next place that we were headed was a little bay on this island called Isla Talcon, which this bay was wonderful. It was a great stopping point. We pulled in and there was already a big commercial vessel inside of the harbor, and they ended up waving us down and said, hey, no worries, there's a really amazing mooring line just over next to us. You guys can go ahead and grab that. And we normally don't like to grab mooring balls or mooring lines, but these guys assured us that this thing was there for big working Chilean ships. And yeah, we pulled the line on, and I think it was maybe, what, an inch and a half thick or something like that?
Yeah, super thick, and looked in good shape from what we could tell. It was fairly deep, and with the big tides, it was the safer choice.
Yeah, we backed down on it to test it out, waved over to our friends on the big commercial vessel to say thank you, and then Kate took Roxy ashore for her to do her duties.
It wasn't a beautiful day of sailing, but we were making the last short hop to Puerto Santo Domingo before the next long passage. Next up, we continued with our good winds towards Puerto Santo Domingo. And it was a really shallow anchorage. When you first pull in, it looks like it's this big bay. But with the tides coming out in the morning, we could see that like almost half the water was emptied. We flew the drone in this beautiful sunrise with these amazing tall shooting mountains, and enjoyed the restful night.
Yeah, it was a pretty sketchy anchorage though, because the wind was going to shift. We came in on a norther, and then it was shifting into a southerly, light southerly, and that was going to blow us a little bit towards shore where it was even shallower. So we had to get up in the morning and get out of there to make sure that we didn't get left aground.
The conditions were ever changing, but we had a wonderful sail to the next anchorage as we made our way south in Golfo Corcovado.
So after that, we headed off towards a little place that we also heard a lot about, which was called Melimoyu and Pozo De Oro. Melimoyu is this super small little, I would call it an outpost maybe, of a Chilean town. And the Pozo de Oro anchorage is almost like anchoring on a very small inland lake, like something you would see in northern Michigan. But you can take your boat through this little canal and then go onto this amazing little lake that's maybe only about 100 acres. And it's just one of the coolest places to pull your boat into.
Yeah, it's got this really narrow entrance into the spot Curtis is talking about, with one little off-grid house there. And we tied to the trees. We found a good little spot, but there are some rocks you're supposed to keep an eye out for, but we made it through with no problems. Next thing we did was get in the dinghy and dinghy out of the little anchorage and back into the fjord.
Yeah, we dinghied around this little fjord, and then we also went for a really nice hike down the road in Melimoyu, came out the other side, onto an amazing beach where there's a big commercial dock as well. We met some locals, and Roxy also met some new friends, and she had a great time playing with the two local dogs. It's a really cool little place, but I think there was only a schoolhouse, a small hotel, a post office, and maybe one other government type building and a couple of houses.
Yeah, so it was a great hike for us, and great to get our legs stretched and off the boat. And definitely, if you can make it there, an awesome little spot to with beautiful vistas.
The next day, we got up and we decided to head to Puyuhuapi, which is a gorgeous little town, but it was quite the sail away. So we had a nice, challenging sail. We were able to fly the spinnaker up the fjords on the way there. But what was at the end of this was a really, really fabulous lodge called Puyuhuapi Lodge, and they had just full-on hot springs. This is like a 5-star resort, but the mooring ball was only about $30 or $40 for a day, and you were able to use the full services of the lodge, the restaurant, the bar, the hot springs. It was like we came out of the woods and into like real civilization.
But yeah, the sail there, I just have to say, was one of my favorite sails with the spinnaker. It was a little bit nerve-wracking because we had to kind of wind around. There could be wind shifts or big gusts, but we were able to sail most of the way. And then, like Curtis said, the pot of gold at the end was putting on our swimsuits and just really getting to enjoy Patagonia like it was a vacation and not just a marathon.
Yeah, that was one of the most relaxing 2 days that we had in all of Patagonia.
Right, so unfortunately, vacation can't last forever. So after that, it was time to refuel. We made the short trip to the town of Puyuhuapi under the brilliant sun with towering mountains in the distance. As we sailed, we could see the famous Caraterra Australia highway and knew others were following their dreams right alongside us.
Once again, we set our sails after Puyuhuapi Lodge and headed just a little bit further east to the town of Puyuhuapi, where we stopped at the city dock, we refueled Sweet Ruka, then we moved on over to anchor in front of the town to save a little bit of money on dockage, and we ended up walking around the town. We found a really nice restaurant to get something to eat, and we also took a little stroll down Caraterra Australia.
Yeah, as Curtis said, it's right on Caraterra Australia, and so there were all kinds of people, motorcyclists, bicyclists, foot travelers, backpackers, everybody from all over Europe and South America and the US, just enjoying this beautiful little town that was originally, I think, founded by Germans, and so there was excellent beer as well.
Yes, speaking of Caraterra Australia, what we found most amazing were the huge caravans or RVs, van life type people and motorhomes that were traversing the section, and then also so many motorcyclists. I think it's kind of maybe the next dream is to ride a motorcycle down Caraterra Australia and then back through Route 9 in Argentina.
Yeah, Sweet Ruka Land Rover, next on the list.
Maybe.
We left Puyuhuapi town and headed south to see more, as our goal was to get to the glacier. But first, we stopped at Isla Magdalena and the small anchorage called Seno Morras. We could see in the distance that looked like there was an old house. Maybe somebody was living there. Smoke was coming out of the chimney. So we took Roxy to shore, and as we did, there was a woman on the beach flagging us down. So we headed over to say hello.
Yeah, Roxy and the dogs, they got along. They had such a good time. And we met this amazing woman named Blanca. And wow, does she have a really cool story to tell. She lives on the island by herself, and she is just an amazing lady. We spent 3 or 4 days there in Seno Morras with Blanca, and wow, what an amazing woman, what an amazing lifestyle. She has so many good stories to tell, and she even wrote a book, and she ended up giving us the book, which is in Spanish, so Kate has to do most of the reading.
Yeah, honestly, there's so much footage, and we had such a great time. There could be 2 episodes on this anchorage while visiting her. She fed us and welcomed us into her home like we were her own family. and I would love to give you more details about her lifestyle and how she ended up there, but that's just gonna have to wait for another episode. We made another side trip to a waterfall, and Curtis again tried to scare me by bringing Sweet Ruka's bow nearly under the thundering pressure of the fall. Sailing in the summer provided a few more opportunities for sun than when we sailed in the fall and winter. Well, because we're travelers, we have to keep moving, and so as much as it pained us to leave Blanco, we decided to visit an old friend that we met on our way up the fjords named Jaime in Puerto Aguirre.
Yeah, we stopped in Puerto Aguirre, and that was kind of going to be our staging point to make it to our furthest south point and our big goal of the whole circumnavigation of the area, which was Laguna San Rafael.
We met up with friends from SV Candine in Puerto Aguirre, whom we met while at the dock in Puerto Montt. We agreed to make the long voyage together to Laguna San Rafael to see the northernmost tidewater glacier. The weather and currents require vigilant navigation, planning, and weather routing. There are only a handful of anchorages to choose from on the way down, so our first stop was a picturesque anchorage called Caleta Ubaldo. Candine swung on anchor while we tied to the trees just before sunset. We arose early the next morning to make the long voyage to the next anchorage to prep for the glacier. Reaching the lagoon would require careful planning with the tides through a 5-mile-long river, so we planned to anchor at the nearest anchorage 8 miles outside the entrance to set up for the challenging passage. The sun was shining and the sails were hoisted. Sweet Ruka made great time with Curtis's excellent forecasting and planning.
Yeah, we did a lot of sailing on the way down there, but finally we were sailing against this just immense current, and the winds were light, and from the south we were going upwind, and we were going backwards at a certain point. As fast as Sweet Ruka can sail, we were actually getting pushed like 0.2 knots backwards. So we finally fired up the engine and motored our way down the rest of the fjord to the next anchorage, which was
Bahia Sisquelan. Say that 10 times fast. Anyways, it's this crazy little spot. There's these current eddies kind of ripping against each other, and the boat was doing a little rapid swash as we entered, and we put the anchor down and it grabbed right away, which gave us a good confidence because you're sort of protected by land all the way around. There's a little island that you go in between with the land on the other side, sort of the mainland. It was really well protected, and Candine ended up showing up just before sunset to join us, and before we prepared for our approach to the lagoon.
in this anchorage. There were 2 little old fishing houses. We don't even know if they were used anymore. They look pretty run down. So we decided to explore those a little bit, and those were a little bit creepy, but a little bit cool at the same time. There were parts where I didn't know if a floorboard was going to break under my foot or if some giant spider was going to drop down on me, but it was really cool seeing these old buildings. We also went for another little hike to an old sawmill, and we were able to see these old steam engines that were still there. Unfortunately, we couldn't fire one up. They were too rusted and rotted away. But it was really neat to be able to see some of this old machinery that had been brought down there to try and build up some economy in that portion of Chile. We also went for some little hikes in the area. There was wonderful little trails. So really good place to stage for Laguna San Rafael.
Yeah, you could still see a little bit of an old dock back there where they used to pull up the boat to transport the lumber through, I don't know, the rest of Chile. And there must have been a lot of smells of people and equipment and things because Roxy just went crazy. She loved it, and we had a lot of fun sort of walking back in time.
It was a really good place to stage for Laguna San Rafael. The face of the glacier at Laguna San Rafael was about 13 miles from where we were anchored. And we needed to get up early in the morning and take a current ride in through this little river. And that also pushes the ice up, so it clears the path to be able to take the river in. And then we could spend about 6 hours inside of the glacier area, or the little lagoon inside the glacier. And then we had to come back out at the outgoing tide, so that we were coming out right ahead of or with the other icebergs that are trying to come out the river, so you're not basically going against them at any time. And wow, the trip to Laguna San Rafael was just absolutely amazing. I think it has to be on my top place to go on a sailboat in Chile.
Wow, guys, my adrenaline was just pumping on the way in there with the current ripping us along. And then once we sort of froggered our way across this vortex of swirling icebergs, then it was, how are we going to get to the glacier in this giant field of icebergs? And so it was just this just amazing adrenaline rush and challenge, personal challenge, that kind of just didn't compare to anything else that we've done so far.
Yeah, our friends Tim on Candine hailed us on the radio and called us in as Icebreaker Sweet Ruka because of the way we were threading our way through all of the little bergy bits, and actually some really big, I would definitely call these icebergs. There were some that I would say they were the size of a ship or a super yacht, over maybe 200 meters long, and one we actually saw completely turn upside down, which was an absolutely stellar sight. So we worked our way to the front of the glacier, and then we decided, well, if you made it this far, what do we have to do next? Well, we've got to put our sails up and go sailing, right?
Oh my gosh. Well, right at the very base of the glacier, we were watching a lot of calves fall, but there was still a big open space where the icebergs or the bergy bits had started to drift out. So Curtis we agreed to set the sails, unfurl the jib, and do a few tacks to show the one tourist boat that was in there how it's done.
Yeah, I mean, you just want to get the picture of the sails up at the glacier. I feel like that's the shot, right? So we tried to go for it.
Anyhow, on our way out, it turned out to be quite tricky, as our way in had sort of compressed together and none of us could really find a clear path. So Candine, being the thicker hull boat, decided to take the lead on that one.
Yeah, they did a good job kind of picking a way, path in a way through the ice, and they were radioing back on us, trying to give us ice outlooks. We had to be extra careful because Sweet Ruka has a cord hull. And she's built more like a race boat than a big, sturdy cruising or icebreaker aluminum, expedition boat. So she's a little fragile, right? And we spent all the time putting an absolutely wonderful Micron premium bottom on the bottom. She's fared. The last thing we want to do is have to pull it out and repair any damage done by ice to the bottom. So we were really careful picking our way through. Kate was up on the bow. Sometimes she would have to push one out of the way. But yeah, it was definitely difficult and definitely little...
Yeah, our communication was key. We didn't need walkie-talkies or anything, but we used some hand gestures, a lot of shouting, and I used the boat hook to definitely try to push them away and spin them away, use all my strength, and try not to fall in the water, because it would have been cold.
But in the end, it was an absolutely wonderful day inside of the lagoon and at the face of the glacier. And we also had time to grab up some glacial ice and make a cocktail and do a little cheers, which
yes, we did.
Which is
and we kept some on board and hopefully we will make it to French Polynesia and be able to drink a cocktail with some of our glacial ice.
Yeah, that's the goal. We're going to bring some ice for our drinks from Patagonia to French Polynesia. Yeah. I think we'll be the only ones there with ice from a glacier.
Ice. Yeah. Coming up next time on Sweet Ruka is the conclusion of our navigation of the northern fjords of Patagonia as we inch closer to getting caught up to real time. It is our hope to maybe someday make longer episodes of some of our favorite places you saw in the episode today. Let us know in the comments which episode you would like to see most. Perhaps you want to know more about Blanca, or you can't get enough drone footage from the glacier. A special thank you to our patrons for making these videos possible. If you are enjoying our story, please click subscribe and come along for the ride. See you next time!